Today we are going to cover Lesson 7, Association and Causation. So association is a way to represent a linear relationship between two variables, and the causation is the link between the two variables so that a change in one variable is to produce a change in the other. So here's what I need you to know about association and causation. First is that association and correlation are the same word. So you will hear me say association, but you need to remember that's just the same thing as correlation. So do they correlate? Now, the key thing on this is just because two things associate, so just because there's an association or a correlation between two variables does not mean that there is a causation. So just because there appears to be a positive or a negative correlation, it doesn't mean that it causes it. For example, on the first one, letter A, and some of y'all may need to change this letter A on some of y'all's. I'm going to try to change it here, but if I don't, just know it's the same thing as letter A. Okay, so boating accidents versus ice cream sales. So it appears that the more boating accidents, the higher the ice cream sales. You and I both should know that just because you have a boating accident doesn't mean that it's going to affect the ice cream sales. So here, kind of like a slope, if I were to connect some of these dots, we'll talk about trend lines soon. If they were to connect, that's a positive slope. So this is a positive association. But because these have nothing to do with the other, there's no causation. So kind of like what we talked about here, just because there's an association or a correlation, it doesn't mean that there's a causation. So just because there is a association doesn't mean that this causes that. Alright, letter B. So you have your grade and the time spent on video games. Again, if I were to connect some of these points, it is going down, so it is a negative. So the time that you spend on video games, does that affect your grade? Well, yes, if you're spending all the time on all your free time on playing video games, you're not studying, which means you're going to fail. All right. So let's look at letter C. So again, if I were to connect these, you should see that it's positive. One that has no correlations has dots everywhere. So we've kind of talked about positive and negative, but we haven't talked about a none. A none has dots everywhere. So, does the temperature affect the cells? Well, we don't know. It could be temperature getting hotter and ice cream cells. We don't know. This could be hot chocolate cells. It doesn't tell us what the cells are, so this is not associated with that. It could be car cells. Because we don't know what kind of things that are being sold, we don't know if there is a causation. Okay, so on this one it talks about total U.S. highway fatality rate and fresh lemons imported from the U.S. to the U.S. from Mexico. Well, this one gives us a line. As you can see, the line from left to right is going down. So this is a negative. So does the deaths on the U.S. highway have anything to do with selling or importing fresh lemons or vice versa. You should know that there is no correlation between that, or no causation between that. All right, letter E. The cost of a family vacation home and the size of their home. If you think if their home's big, their vacation's probably going to be bigger. You're probably going to have more money to spend. Is that necessarily the cause? Is the cost of the vacation the size of their home? Not necessarily. So there's no causation here. All right, and the last one would be the time spent exercising and the number of calories you burn. So the more you exercise, the higher your calories burned would be. So this is a positive. Now, is there a correlation or is there a causation? Does the time you spend affect the calories burned? Yes, it does. So remember, the key thing on this lesson is understanding the direction of how the data would go. Would it go up? Would it go down? And is there a true causation between the two things? So does one thing cause the other? And that's how you can tell whether there's a causation or not.